And welcome back to day 4 of the inaugural Brainstorm Comics and Gaming Superhero Draft. We have 16 picks left. You've just watched the 16 picks. Chandler and I are going to be reviewing them, giving our thoughts and analysis on whether we thought they were a reach or whether we thought they were chosen at the right spot, or just shake our head at Luis. But speaking of Luis, number 1 pick, round number 7, he picks his headquarters. I had to look it up because I had no idea what the hell it was. The null time zone.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's pretty par for the course. I mean, you kind of know. I mean, you kind of know what you're gonna get, and that you don't know what you're gonna get.
I think because he has 2 time travelers, he was like, "Yep, we're going to the null time zone."
Again, in terms of not wanting someone to find your headquarters, not a bad choice to me. I still
Mostly because nobody knows about it or even to look for it.
That could play to your strengths, but again, to me, I think your headquarters is more of your kicker. I think you should wait till your last round. I think especially when you only have 64 people on the board, you want to get everyone you can until that last round. So for me, especially, and I don't think anyone was going to take that from him. So I think you could have left that for
pick
round
number
8.
64.
Yeah, I think you could have left that dead last, and it would have been just fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a reach, but I think this is definitely staying in character with Luis's team up to this point.
For sure.
Pick number 40. What are we up to? Hold on a second. 648. Pick number 50.
5-0.
Finally, you got your prayers answered.
Yeah. I mean, this is still disgusting, and they should all be ashamed of themselves. But, I mean, Jason got an absolute steal here at Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman taken with pick number 50.
Again, great choice. Really helps add to his team. You got another person there who can absolutely take lead when she needs to, but absolutely can run point and just go ahead. You have godlike character, superpowers.
Do you think maybe he's going a little too heavy on the power, though, with Superman?
I think that Wonder Woman also adds a lot of...
Because, I mean, you can't say leadership because we already got Captain America and Superman.
Again, I still think right now Captain America is a chink in the armor. I think Wonder Woman adds on to it in that she both has the power, but she also has a bit of the mystic and the godlike entity. I think that she also adds a lot of nuance to her character, and not necessarily always being the leader, but having the wisdom to make the right call and to make the right decision. And also
she can make you tell the truth whether you want to or not. Also,
that is true. And every good leader, I think, needs that co-leader that can help even out the team.
She did snap a man's neck, though.
That happened once. She regrets it for the most part.
For the most part. So that brings us up to number 51, Zatanna by Balmori.
I think Zatanna is a good choice for a mystic character.
She'll do what you ask her to. I mean, she'll mind wipe whoever.
Yeah, if that's what you need, and if she's game. But I think it's something that he needed on his team. I think.
Do you think we can enlist her to mind wipe us from Luis's picks?
I hope so. But I think it's somebody that Balmori needed on his team. I think it does help even it out a bit.
Yes, it's a mystic.
But to me... Well, but on the other hand, he already has Dr. Fate. So
That's true.
You can argue
he's doubling up on.
You can argue that having 2 magic people helps. They can feed off of each other. It helps strengthen their powers. But when you already have a team, like we've said, who does have a lot of street level characters, a couple cosmic that you're evening out. I don't know if that was a mistake in doubling up on the magic when there was still you had another opportunity, especially since he had already taken his headquarters. He had 2 more choices, where other people are going to have to use one of their picks and have to use that on a headquarters. He could have taken that opportunity and chosen 2 types of characters he does not yet have. I don't know if doubling up is the best choice.
I think it's a solid choice. I don't know. I don't like the character as much just because of identity crisis.
You gotta get over that.
It was a good choice in terms of power and everything. However, Andrew continues his picks with X-Mansion at the 4th pick of round number 7.
I think it's a good choice. I think, like you mentioned, for a lot of reasons earlier. I think to me it's still a little bit earlier to go, but again, he was right in the middle. he's right in the middle of that last round. So at that point, you know,
Maybe a headquarters.
everybody's going to be taking their headquarters, and somebody might have grabbed yours. If that's what he really wanted, if that's what he thought was best for his team, I can't fault him for grabbing it in the 7th round. Like I said, I think he maybe could have waited, but again, it's hard to poke holes in what he's doing so far.
At number 5 in the 7th round, Steve, with only the second choice of a non-Marvel DC superhero, takes Hellboy.
I think if you're going to go off the board into independence, I think in my mind, there's a lot more characters I would put ahead of Hellboy. I think if we're amalgamating everything together, he does give that, god-ish level, with being, from, roots to hell, things like that, a little bit of extra stuff there. But I think, again, for the most part, Hellboy is really utilized as another punch-em-up character, which, as we've said, he's got a lot of. I don't know that he needed that. I think something else more cosmic would have really helped give his team that little boost that I think he's going to need. So again, I think I'm glad that somebody's going off the board with Marvel and DC, but I don't know that Hellboy would have been the best choice.
I don't think it's a terrible choice, but yeah, I think that I think there were a lot of missed opportunities well ahead of this one of sliding some of those independent characters in on this one. But let's move on to the next pick. Tyler chooses Professor X, Charles Xavier.
I think it's a solid pick.
Good team leader.
Yeah, definitely. I think 7th round, I definitely wouldn't have taken him any earlier than that. I'm trying to think real quick. I believe that Tyler's team was still kind of in search of who was that one person that was going to kind of ground him. So,
the leader.
Obviously not people that he's worked with before, but he has been a good, leader in past, being able to do that. So I think somebody he needed, obviously a different power that we haven't seen too many characters with that type of ability on the board yet. So
he has become Onslaught in the past, though.
Gives him a little bit of an advantage over some other characters in the competition. So I can't fault the pick. I think it's good. I think 7 is a pretty good round for Professor X.
And then Jake followed it up with one of his favorites, War Machine.
To me, it's a bit of a head scratcher. If
Iron
Man's still on the board, again, yeah, talking about characters you thought would be picked, not necessarily team leader, but Iron Man for sure in terms of brains, wealth, ingenuity, things that you bring to the table.
The resources he has, yeah.
If you have the original, do you necessarily want to go for the sidekick? Not that War Machine is a bad character, a weak.
Maybe Jake's still angry about Civil War.
It could be. He obviously still has, things that he brings to the table, but I think that if you have Iron Man available, I would take Iron Man ahead of War Machine.
Yeah. And then him and his dad, if he had taken Iron Man, since his dad took Captain America, they would be on opposite sides.
That's true. Be some bad blood there.
So then Kermit follows it up with one of his favorites, Starfire.
I think this is a type of character that he needed on his team. I think this is a good pick. I think that this is probably properly rated. I think it's somebody that a lot of people might not necessarily have thought of, but I think she is a good choice. Definitely brings that galactic entity to it, that superpower that he needs, pulls him more away from that street level. I think now with her, Martian Manhunter, Supergirl, he's a little bit taking himself off of the ground, fighting goons to get into the warehouse, and he's got a little bit more of people that can watch over them and can help no matter the threat.
He's still lacking, I think, a leader in terms of...
I think Martian Manhunter could be that spot for him. Again, like I said, he's led the Justice League before. I don't see that's necessarily a bad thing, but I would agree. I mean, that's not necessarily a guaranteed lock with him, but I think Starfire, again, is somebody he needed that wasn't just a punch-him-up ground-level character.
Yeah. And then he followed it up with his headquarters in round number 8, first pick of that round, Titan Tower.
I don't hate it.
Fits with what he was building.
It definitely fits with what he was building, but I don't think it's a bad, I don't think it's a bad headquarters to have.
Jake followed it up with his headquarters, Fortress of Solitude. Of course, if you're going to have a team there, I guess it's less solitude at that point.
That's true. That's a little chilly as well. But, I think, solid choice, solid headquarters. I think it's one of the ones that people think of when they're thinking of where to go in your head.
Tyler already had his headquarters, so he followed it up with Wiccan. Not a fan of that one.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think
I have to look over his list. I don't know whether he had a mystic up until this point or not.
I think in terms of, again, like to me, I'm really just trying to look. I mean, he's got Shazam,
Okay.
but if I have 64 choices, I don't know that Wiccan's on my board necessarily. Again, not that it's a terrible character or a terrible choice, but just to me, if you do have a bit of a mystic in Shazam and you have that magic ability, I don't know that you need to double dip.
I understand. So Steve went with Krakoa and was immediately given some flack by his fellow drafters.
He has no X-Men. He's not even going to be allowed on there. He's going to get in trouble.
So that seemed to be the consensus that that the headquarters was not going to work for his
It doesn't
team.
necessarily suit his team.
No.
It's not that it's a bad location, but again, will he even have permission to step foot on there?
Andrew already had his headquarters chosen, so he went with Luke Cage, Power Man.
To me, I think of all of his choices, this one may be the weakest, and that's saying something considering it's Power Man. He's not a weak character. I think he did a good job in the sense that I think putting your street level fighter towards the bottom is what you want to do, because you would think that the very powerful characters would be wiped off on the board first. So I think that it's maybe the weakest choice, but it's not necessarily weak to his team, because
So imagine if he had gotten Karnak, and I know he keeps going back to Karnak, but
really want somebody to get Karnak, and they're just not going to do it. I get the advantage, but they're just not going to do Karnak.
I know. But imagine if he had Karnak on his team, like with everyone he already had on there.
Okay, but he has a pretty good street level character.
I
I would have maybe picked, Daredevil instead, or somebody else that adds a little bit more than Luke Cage. But again, it's hard to knock it because
What about Red Hood? Red Hood's still out there, and Red Hood's willing to take people out.
I was gonna say he's just gonna shoot you in the head. He's not gonna worry to fight you. Now, Power Man is definitely stronger than Red Hood, and he's definitely stronger than Daredevil. I think Daredevil is more of a nuanced overall character if you're looking at that street level. But again, it's hard to argue with that choice. He's got such a well put together team that having your street level character as your last choice and having somebody like Luke Cage on the board, I think puts him in a really good spot.
So, Balmori's last pick is the Spectre, who I thought would go in round 1 or round 2.
He's definitely on my board towards the very top. That I was definitely very surprised. That there were a couple of things I was surprised by how far some characters dropped. That was definitely one of them.
Now, I will be honest, I would have swapped him with Ghost Rider, not taking Ghost Rider and chosen somebody else, because I feel like you're being kind of repetitive with the two to a degree.
Yes, and definitely Spectre. Between the two, that is definitely the better choice. I mean, you have the Wrath of God coming there. Now, you could run into a little trouble, which I mentioned to you with the Spectre, and that a lot of the times
It's God's will.
people go to the Spectre and he hits him up with the, oh yeah, that sucks, I know it's terrible, but I can't get
It's God's
involved.
will.
Now, people could also argue that eventually he still gets involved anyway, even though he says he can't. It just has to get to a certain point and he will get involved. He's definitely if you have a last card that you're going to throw down at, when it's darkest right before the dawn, that's not a bad card to have. And like I said, I was very surprised that dropped almost to the very last pick.
And then we have Jason following it up with what I think is a steal, especially for headquarters. Well, let me first say that Balmori, I think, got a huge steal with that list.
Absolutely.
But I feel like Jason got a steal in his headquarters as well with the Sanctum Sanctorum.
I think that's a really solid choice. I think that one was well thought out in terms of headquarters. I think a couple people just chose a place that they think would be cool to hang. I think that place would probably be cool to hang, but also it gives you a lot of preparation, a lot of knowledge, a lot of things that you need to help prepare you for any type of situation. And Steve had Stephen Strange, and now he doesn't have his home anymore, so he could have grabbed that. He left it on the board for Jason to steal. I think for headquarters, that's I would put that in my top 3. Could go at number 1. I think to fall to the second to last pick put him in a good spot. I think he played that well by waiting and letting that fall to him in the last round and utilizing time to pick up more characters to help round out his team.
Luis, he kept the children together from the Fantastic Four. And then he put the buddies back together as well. Cable and Deadpool. Deadpool, last pick of the inaugural Brainstorm Comics and Gaming superhero draft. What do you think of this choice?
I think Deadpool wouldn't win any other way, but I think it's definitely a better choice than Cable.
I think Deadpool would have a chip on his shoulder, being picked number 64.
Again, has the regenerative ability. You know, I think there's definitely good things there. If the rest of his team were different, I think that Deadpool would be a solid player to add to your team, but I think that he was very lacking in a lot of areas that Deadpool doesn't necessarily meet that criteria. Not that it's a bad pick,
Yeah.
but I definitely would say round 8 would be where you'd want to have it.
So who do you think lost round or day 4? I don't think Luis lost. It pains me to say. I don't.
You don't think that he lost round 4?
Or day 4, yeah.
Honestly, for me, I would probably put I'd put Steve down at the bottom.
I hate to
Steve.
say it.
Steve's
like,
a great guy.
Steve
I
had a
like
lot
him
of fun with the draft and everything, but
I think he's probably towards the bottom for this one. Yeah, I think he's probably sitting for the bottom for day 4.
who do you think won day 4?
Well, I mean, for me, in terms of what they got when they got it, I think Jason is up there and like number 1 or number 2 for me. He got Wonder Woman and the Sanctum Sanctorum in the last 2 spots. Sanctum Sanctorum, a little not as big of a surprise, but the fact that you're able to get Wonder Woman in the 7th round is a huge steal. I think that definitely puts him in a really good spot.
I think for the first time, Andrew falls out of my top 2. I think he takes number 3 because I think Balmori takes number 2. And I agree with you. I think Jason won day 4 with his picks. Balmori, I think, was very close in it. For me, the only reason he didn't is because he doubled up with I feel like Ghost Rider and Spectre were.
The reason why I have him at number 2 and not number 1 is I think he doubled up there, but he also doubled up with Dr. Fate and Zatanna, which to me I think he could have used either of those picks to give him something else that he might have needed to add to his team. And again, on their own, neither one of those are necessarily bad picks. Spectre, like we said, is a huge steal in the last round, but in terms of what you already
But also
have,
proof that like if you can read the room as to where people are, you can get great steals later in the draft.
absolutely.
Who do you think won the draft? All 4 days combined.
I mean, I think despite, not being in the number 1 spot on day 4, I think it's hard to argue that Andrew is not the number 1 candidate there for the draft.
Power rankings.
I think
Andrew number 1.
I have Andrew number 1. I think there's a lot of people that could be in close, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, or a little closer for me. I think Andrew is a bit of a jump ahead at number 1. I think he's a pretty strong number 1 for overall draft.
And I don't even think I have to ask the question, but I'll ask it anyway. Who's ranked at the bottom of your power rankings?
For me, I would probably have to say no. I mean, it's probably going to be Luis, but honestly, I think that if we weren't just going to kick Luis while he's down, if I'm looking for somebody else there, honestly, and again, pains me to say it, I think that the person with the most repetition in their team, that again, if it is straight up Mortal Kombat, punch him out to the death, I think he's in a good spot. But a lot of other situations, I don't know. I think Steve has a lot of characters that I think he really likes, and definitely a lot of early Marvel, a lot of really good stuff. But I think in terms of having a well played out hand of all different areas, I think he's got a lot of characters in the same spot in that one note.
Are there any characters that were not chosen that you were absolutely shocked by?
I think the fact that we opened it up to independents, not enough people played into that. I mean, we only had 2 independent characters. I mean, if we're counting the manga, 3. But we only had those 2 characters taken off the board. I think the fact that Invincible wasn't taken is a huge mistake. And, I mean, especially now you have the TV show and everything. You think that would have been on everybody's minds, that they'd be, picking that. I was surprised Tyler didn't pick that, since that's also one of it. He didn't get Spider-Man or Invincible, his, 2 favorites there, and those are actually deserved favorites that you would want to have on your team, especially Invincible. Definitely a big powerhouse there. I think that was a mistake not being on the board. I think you could have argued Spawn from the independents could have been filled out. It could have helped out, even out a lot of people's teams, give them a little more depth there.
The Turtles.
I think a lot of people went really, but then if the Turtles, you can't get all 4. You
you'd
have
have
one.
to choose one.
And then are they the same if they're on their own? But I think a lot of people missed that opportunity. They went pretty much Marvel DC, which again, obviously more known for their superheroes. It's easier to choose from, but I think you could have snuck in and you would have got a lot of good choices, and you wouldn't have had a lot of competition if you did a bit of your history on those independent characters.
I'm shocked that.
Karnak.
Well, I'm not shocked, but I feel like Karnak should be off of the board. But also, like Ulysses, I know you may not know who Ulysses is. He was the character from Civil War II. He's the one that could see the future and that they base it off of. Obviously, a team with that sort of ability would be like pretty well set. I feel like Mosaic, he's a favorite character of mine. I feel he can jump from body to body. He retains their memories and their knowledge. Again, if you're going on a spy mission or what have you, seems like he would be a good fit for that. Lockjaw, in order to like teleport people.
Phantom Stranger.
Miss Marvel, Phantom Stranger.
I think a lot of in both universes you have, you know, Zeus. So you have other godlike characters. Thor was taken because he's the most famous, but you have a lot of those other characters that are incredibly powerful. You know, in some versions of the DC universe, in the Godhead there that you'd think you'd want to have on your team. That I was a little surprised nobody picked up.
Yeah. So in closing, hopefully you had fun watching the superhero draft, our inaugural one. We hope to follow it up again. You are necessary for what's necessary after this, however. We need your thoughts on what we need to put the characters through, the different scenarios. After we get the scenarios in place, we're going to have the people, each of the teams, choose different amounts of characters. Maybe it'll be like a 2-person mission or a 3-person mission. And then we'll have you guys and gals vote on who you think would be most successful in those missions. So like I said, in order for this to truly be as fun and encompassing as we were hoping it would be, we need everyone's help out there. So hopefully we can get some help from you guys and some suggestions. If not, I'll create them myself, but I'm hoping for more input from the people watching, and we go from there. Hopefully you enjoyed the inaugural superhero draft. Hopefully it was something different than what you guys are normally used to watching, and hopefully it kept you entertained for a couple of days. Thank you for watching.